Let's talk about a story that's literally out of this world. Have you ever looked up at the moon and imagined it just splitting in two? Well, in the 7th century, a story emerged that this wasn't just imagination. It was a miracle, a divine sign that became a cornerstone of faith for millions. So, what really happened that night?
Okay, picture this, Mecca. The Prophet Muhammad is up against some serious skepticism from the pagans of his tribe. They're demanding proof, a sign so huge, so undeniable that it could only come from God. According to Islamic tradition, he gave them one they would never, ever forget. So, to really get this, we have to start with the original account. What did the people on the ground that night actually claim they saw? Well, the primary source is right there in the Quran. This verse says it flat out. The moon has split, a sign that the end times are near. But what's really fascinating is that it also predicts the reaction, that even when faced with something impossible, people would just write it off as passing magic. The event even has a name, Shaqq al-Qamar, which translates to the splitting of the moon. And the story's pretty straightforward. In response to that challenge for a sign, the prophet gestured at the moon and poof, it miraculously split into two separate pieces. The people who were there reported an absolutely staggering sight. One half of the moon was hanging over one side of a mountain, Mount Abu Qubais, and the other half was on the complete opposite side. You can see why a visual claim like that would be so incredibly powerful. It's a foundational miracle. But, an event that massive, something happening to the moon itself, it brings up a really, really big question. If this happened, who else saw it? Exactly. I mean, if the moon, a celestial body visible to half the planet, literally broke in half, surely somebody else would have made a note of it, right? This is the question that sends us digging through the records of all the other great civilizations of the 7th century. And this is where the story takes a sharp turn. We look at the Chinese astronomers, who were obsessive about recording every comet and eclipse. Nothing. We check the Byzantines, the Persians, the Mayans with their mind-bogglingly precise lunar calendars, even Jewish communities who tracked the moon religiously for festivals. The result is the same, every single time. Absolute, deafening silence. Let's just zero in on one example, the Byzantines. They were a hub of knowledge, and more importantly, they were serious omen watchers. They paid very close attention to the heavens for signs. And yet, in all their detailed chronicles, all their letters from that time, not a single word about the moon splitting. Not a peep. So this is the crucial takeaway here. You have an event that should have been visible to millions of people across continents, and yet the historical record outside of that one region is completely, totally empty. A world full of obsessive skywatchers was silent. Okay, so with no historical backup, we're left looking for a different kind of proof. So let's fast forward about 1,400 years and see what modern science has to say, with a little help from NASA. Now, in the age of the internet, you've probably seen this claim pop up. People point to these long lines you can see on the moon's surface and say, see, those are the scars from when it was put back together. But when you ask NASA, their scientists are unequivocal. There is zero geological evidence that the moon ever split into two and was then reassembled. So what are those lines then? Well, science has a name for them. They're called lunar rilles. And you can just think of them as long, narrow trenches, basically, formed by totally natural things like ancient volcanic activity or the ground shifting on the moon. And here is the real kicker. These features are not from the 7th century, not even close. Geologists have figured out that these rilles are millions and in some cases billions of years old. They are ancient scars from the moon's own life story, not from a recent miracle. So this leaves us with a pretty profound puzzle, doesn't it? You have this deeply held religious account on one hand, and then a complete lack of historical or scientific evidence on the other. How on earth do you reconcile those two things? This basically brings us to a few possible ways of looking at it. For believers, it's simple. It was a literal miracle. An act of God isn't bound by the laws of physics, and the evidence is faith itself. For others, the Quranic verse might be a powerful metaphor for some huge, world-changing event. And there's a third idea. Maybe it was a localized vision, a miracle meant only for those specific people, in that specific place, at that specific time. And in the end, this whole thing leaves us with a question that's way bigger than just this one event. When a story that is foundational to millions of people stands in stark contrast to the physical and historical record, How do we tell that story? There's no easy answer, is there? Just a fascinating mystery that connects faith, history, and the sky above us.